and two of them I think we can probably handle very quickly, and we will deal with those first. And without anything in my possession, well, I see that we're gonna save 591 to the last one of the three. So the other two, well, guys, we should get to you pretty quick. Now, all of you are going to testify, right? That's got a uniform on. Well, let me ask you: did you take that bullet out of your pocket and put it in that gun? I don't know, but he had a pretty bad. Well, just kind of when we were in the Army, they said in a lull like this is if you got them, light them up. I can tell anyone was in the Army in here. If you got them, light them. So she should be here in just a few minutes, and we'll get started. But I'll tell you, and let's just go ahead and start. And each time we have our gathering, as we also do with our session, each day we start with prayer, and we're going to do that this year. So let's bow for a moment of prayer. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the ability to serve people, and we pray that we'll always be mindful of not just our will, but your will. Help us to do this in a way that will benefit the people of Georgia, and especially as they look to the future. We ask that you'd be with us, lead, guide, and direct us, and we ask these things in your name. Amen. And even with that in mind, Sarah's not here. I do want to recognize a new member to the committee who is the vice chair, and I did tell him this morning I plan to be out a lot. So, so Tom Kirby is the new vice chair. Christian Coomer was up until this year, and he got this little bitty committee called Transportation. So he got bumped. But anybody want to say anything? House 170? I think the governor took care of that yesterday. Let's just spend the money. Well, guys, if you don't talk to each other, it's just going to be really silent in here. Oh, gee. That's the reason we're saving 591 to the last. Let's see how many. Okay, I think we can get started. And as I said, we're going to hold 591 to the last bill. And so did Tom Weldon, is Tom here?
No, sir, he's not here.
He was?
Yeah, he won't be.
Well, we're going to excuse him in here also. Okay, that's right. Well, to be quite honest with you, we are down. We said we were going to leave it to the last one. This is the last one. And that is okay, all right. Who was it? Oh, okay. All right. What we're going to do is I think that we're going to have someone from the ERS to present this bill because Chairman Weldon is not here. So I was told that have a substitute. If you would, please. Is that on? Yeah.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jim Potvin. I'm the Executive Director for ERS. We're looking at HB 605.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a bill that impacts the judicial retirement system. There's a provision in the system now that allows for individuals to transfer from a part-time judge's status to a full-time judge's status. And if they do so, the service that they received while a part-time individual does not count toward vesting for their benefit once they become a full-time judge. In addition, the service from the standpoint of creditable service for the part-time service only counts on a 1-to-3 ratio basis. In other words, if they had 6 years of part-time service, they would receive 2 years of full-time service for the calculation of their final benefit. The biggest problem to me was the fact that they did not receive vesting credit for their part-time service. What essentially can happen is you can have a part-time judge who works for, let's say, 12 years. 10 years is the vesting. At that point, we would consider that judge vested in a benefit in the JRS. If they were to move to a full-time position, then they would lose that vesting service and become non-vested once again. Vesting is supposed to mean an irrevocable right to a benefit, so I believe that this is a problem with the way the statute is currently worded. And the deletion of the word "not" in line 12 is intended to rectify that. In other words, all the service that they receive should count toward vesting for the benefit. Now, as far as the benefit service itself is concerned, the 1-to-3 credit ratio is basically just an arbitrary number. For some people, that makes sense because they end up working approximately 3 times as much as they were working in a part-time position. Others, they end up in a full-time position that might be many multiples of that, so say 5 or 6 or 7 times of what their part-time service was. So they should not receive as much credit for their part-time service. Others may have had a very substantial part-time position where they were receiving a salary, say, half of what their ultimate full-time salary should or ended up being, so they should receive more credit for their part-time service. So the other portion of this bill intends to create a ratio. We look at the highest average salary for their part-time service compared to the highest average salary for their full-time service and use that ratio to determine how much of their part-time service is actually going to be creditable service toward their final benefit. That way it's not arbitrary and it is actually related to the experience of that particular individual as he moves from part-time to full-time status.
Okay. Does the committee have any questions of the bill? We did discuss this back in the summer. We did have the actuarial study and you have that in your packet. So, who is 2? Chairman Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we discussed this back in the summer, but I've slept since then, and I have trouble remembering. How many judges are we actually looking at that this is going to affect?
Probably less than a dozen.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all.
All right. Chairman Meadows.
They do. It's based on the salary they receive as a part-time judge.
Is that money separate from full-time judges' money?
It is not. It's essentially treated the same way. The only difference is their salaries happen to be much smaller as a part-time judge. That's correct. It's all within the JRS. That's right.
All right, Representative Bentley.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just want to be clear on the judges. Is this probate judges, magistrate, superior court? Just want to be really clear on what type of judge. I'm not hearing judges, but I just want to be clear on which judge it will be.
It is primarily state court judges.
State court judges. Okay. Thank you. And it's on. Say.
Or less. I'm not
Or
sure on the
less.
exact number, but it's a very small number.
Thank
Now,
you.
that is not to say there couldn't be others in the future, but for now, it's a very small number.
All right, Chairman Maxwell.
I'll just appropriate time. I'm ready for a motion, sir.
All right. Any other questions? Well, I think this is the appropriate time.
I would move we do pass on House Bill 605.
We have a motion and second. All in favor of the motion passing, do pass, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, motion is carried. Thank you so very much, Jim,
Thank you to
for
the
doing
committee.
this. This will expedite that. All right, Colonel. The only reason he's wearing the sling is for sympathy. But he's also got a gun.
My mouth and my right arm. They're coming apart. And I
All
don't have
right.
it buttoned because I couldn't manage that either. So,
All right. Share with us this bill.
okay, this House Bill 591. I've testified probably before every committee in this House at one time or another throughout my 43 years in state government, and but I've never made it to the retirement system, and I never ever really thought that I would. But I was contacted last year by the Peace Officers Association, the Peace Officers Annuity and Benefit Fund, and I go way back, and I remember when this fund was created in 1950. At that time, there wasn't any funding for retirement for most of the law enforcement agencies around the state, particularly the cities and the counties. And we had a gentleman who was the association's attorney, who just by happenstance also used to be the head of legislative council. And he passed a lot of initiatives for the Peace Officers Association, one of which was this retirement system. And it was initially thought to be private, but when it passed, the funding mechanism was that each individual would pay a certain amount each month, which is increased through the years. But it also gets a small percentage of traffic fines and forfeitures that the courts, the cities, and the counties pay into the fund. Well, once that occurred, the Attorney General got involved because you're taking money from government and putting it into retirement funds, so they made this a state retirement fund. There hadn't been that many people that have joined it through the years. Mostly it's been from the real rural areas, from the cities and the counties that had small populations of law enforcement officers that had no other retirements. As you all know, times have changed dramatically. The peace officers profession is suffering pretty much right now. It's very difficult to encourage people to get into the police officer field. Many of them that I know are leaving early and are anxiously awaiting retirement. Some of the cities and counties now, in order to enhance peace officer benefits, have decided to pay the personal amount that each law enforcement officer has to pay, which is now $20. With this bill, will go up to $30 to try and enhance and keep people on the force. What has occurred with more people coming in and traffic fines have diminished for a variety of reasons, they're taking more money out and less money is coming in. And they're failing to meet the standards that the state requires of the retirement systems to fund it. Now, I wasn't involved in the process of how this bill got drawn. It was brought to me, and I don't think anybody wanted to pick on one particular entity, but I think what they did was they copied the firemen's retirement fund. The firemen's retirement fund came about the same time. It's funded wholly by the insurance association by way of homeowners insurance. This one has liability insurance as one. Certainly law enforcement is involved a lot with liability insurance. You know, they maintain all the records, they do all the traffic fines, they try and remove problems from drivers from the road, they provide accident reports, and I'm not adequately prepared to go into all the facets of the money and the distribution and things that probably concern you, but I have Mr. Buddy Carter here, who is the executive director of the fund. It's his full-time job. He's appointed by the governor. They have a board with 3 law enforcement officers. I think some of them are here, a state officer, a county officer, and a city officer that are also appointed by the governor, and a couple of other people that are gubernatorial appointees. So I think Mr. Carter wants to speak, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have at me, but I have basically a historical knowledge, and I've never been involved with the financial part of it, except, and I'll be perfectly honest, I draw retirement from it. I didn't start off with it because I thought it was too much money for too little benefit, and I only paid in 22 years. I did last night think to look at, I spent 22 years and I get $550 a month. If I spend 15 years in the legislature, I'll get the exact same payment for 7 years less. So. Well, the maximum is 30 years. If you get 30 years, I think it's up to almost $800 a month. But that's the limit. It used to be vested after 10 years. They've increased that in 2010 when there was some legislation to 15 years to be vested. My primary concern, of course, it's important to all the law enforcement community, but there are still people out there who work for small agencies. I had a friend who's an investigator for the DA's office. This is all the retirement he will ever get, that and Social Security. And in this day and time, it's pretty difficult. Some have great retirement systems. I was the beneficiary of probably one of the best retirement systems that's ever been brought forward, but the people today don't have that. And any of the agencies, some of the big metropolitan agencies have a pretty good retirement system, but you know, in Florida, they have one retirement system in the whole state, and the state funds that. If you move from one agency to another, you maintain your retirement throughout your whole law enforcement career, but it can be a little haphazard in Georgia. Mr. Carter? Any questions?
What we'll do is we'll
Okay.
go ahead and speak to it if you'll stay up, Colonel, and then we'll may ask both of you questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to introduce Roger Garrison, Sheriff of the
Yeah.
County. He's chairman of the board.
Oh, good. Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be very brief because Colonel Hitchens covered most of the points. Our biggest issue we're facing today is recruitment. Our law enforcement community is facing such problems nationwide, and it's so difficult to recruit police officers with what we're trying to accomplish. And this retirement that we're trying to offer is so vital to that recruitment process. And like the Colonel said, with more and more officers coming in, that is hitting that fund. Officers like myself, the Colonel, and probably a lot of these people in this room, that fund is very solid. The board has done a very good job with it, but we've got to look beyond that. The funding source set by the legislature back in the 50s has not been improved since it was created in 1950. So we've got to do something to prepare this fund for generations of police officers beyond ourselves. So that's why it's just very important that we address this now before it does get critical, because we've got to recruit those police officers that we want, protecting our families and protecting our families. The bill itself it's probably not perfect, and I'm just here to ask you, and I'm not here to ask you, I'm here to beg you to let's keep this thing moving forward so that we can work it on the floor and tweak out something that we can keep this fund, this vital fund, alive. Director Carter is here, and he can speak to specifics, and then we'd be glad to try to answer any questions you might have as to why we feel that tapping into the automobile industry is the best funding source that's out there.
Okay, Bob, would you? And then we'll just save our questions and hit y'all at one time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Obviously, with the attendance we have here today, this bill is important to law enforcement in the state of Georgia. This is the biggest thing that's happened to this fund since 1950 when it was originally created. We've had another thing that happened to us this year in the world of GASB. If y'all are familiar with that, General Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Mm-hmm. It has put more restrictions and more things that we have to do now. And it is going to truly become part of the state of Georgia because any unfunded liabilities we have in the Peace Officers Fund now becomes part of the balance sheet of the state of Georgia. And this is going to happen to all public pension plans, and especially those for the state that legislature created years ago, then in the cities and the counties. That's why we're seeing them diminish in retirement plans, because they've got to start picking up their pension plan for their employees on the cities and counties' balance sheets. Just to bring you some statistics, if I may, of where we are and where we came from. This year, 2015, this prior year, we had a total of 1,037 new members coming to the fund. And that brings us up to a total membership now of some 12,900 active members in the fund. Those members came from 494 of the 1,000 members came from the counties in the state of Georgia, law enforcement, county law enforcement. 411 came from the city. 71 came from the Department of Corrections. And 61 came from state officers, GBI, state patrols, and those type. So we've seen a tremendous increase in the growth of membership in 1,037 officers in 1 year. This is the one thing that I've always been concerned about, is when the benefits become attractive enough or lack of benefits in other counties that everybody in law enforcement decides to join. It is truly a voluntary system that they can join anytime they get ready to join. Now, I know there's some 35 to 40,000 sworn officers in the state of Georgia, and so we only have a smattering of those that are there. In 2014, we had a total active membership of 19,909. As of yesterday, our active membership is 14,058. We had 1,071 that was vested in law enforcement but was out of the system waiting to attain retirement age. Now it's 2,433. And the biggest growth we've seen, as these gentlemen alluded to, is retirement benefits. We had 4,916 retirees. As of yesterday, we have 5,370 retirees drawing benefits on a monthly basis. So a total, as of yesterday, we have 21,861 law enforcement officers from the cities, counties, and the state of Georgia participating in this fund. Give you a little bit of the financial stuff, but I want to tell you the real reason that I have the best job in the state of Georgia, and that is being able to afford stuff for the law enforcement officers out there. Almost monthly, I get a handwritten note from a widow from all over the state of Georgia. It says, "Bobby, thank y'all for this benefit and this check. It means the difference in whether I buy groceries or pay the power bill." This is truly, it is meant to be a supplemental retirement plan, but it is truly a meaningful benefit to the people in the state of Georgia in the law enforcement world. These officers today are making a lot more money than they used to, but they still don't make what they deserve for the liabilities they take on. But in the early years, it was not unusual for a sheriff in some of the counties to make $6,000 a year and furnish his own car and his own weapons. Currently, we have an actuarial accrued liability. That means if we shut the fund down today and paid out everybody that we're going to owe benefits on for as long as they live and their beneficiaries, of $664,838,000. We have accrued assets of $617,755,000. So that leaves us in a shortage of an unfunded position of $47,082,000. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at it percentage-wise, that makes us 92.9% funded. And if you look at the corporate world and most of the other states around us, they would be tickled to death to have a funded plan at 92%. And so just like Roger said, we're trying to do something to make sure we stay in a legitimate situation to where we can fund retirement benefits in the future. The problem we're having now, and what's going to create the problem down the road, is a requirement that was established by the General Assembly called minimum funding requirements. That tells us how much we've got to take in every year to be able to pay off this mortgage that we have as an unfunded liability. We haven't met the minimum required contribution funding since 2011. And so we see there's a snowball coming down the hill. We need to do something to make sure that snowball doesn't get any bigger as we go through the future years. And some of the discussion we had in the board about why insurance, there's a connection there between the law enforcement world and insurance that's kind of like anybody else, your personal connection to the insurance. The law enforcement officers out there are responsible for writing all the traffic reports and accidents. They write for the good side and for the bad side. They end up having to go to court to testify for one insurance company and sometimes against another insurance company. So they're always involved. And then one of the biggest things they do, they offer tickets to the individuals out there that are not conforming with state law and having insurance. So when they run across those, they help you in the insurance world, in the sales. They're a sales officer for you in writing a ticket and making you go get an insurance policy. But one of the big things, that's probably the big dollar, is recovery of stolen assets. If you've got a tractor and trailer out there on Interstate 75 that's stolen by somebody, and the law enforcement officers in the next two counties recover that stolen tractor and trailer, that is one major claim that the insurance company has not had to pay for the recovery of that stolen vehicle. So we think there's a direct relationship between law enforcement and the insurance world. Right now, when you look at it, we have $2,492,000 as the minimum funding shortfall every year. And as we go forward, we talked about the GASB rules. I haven't figured out yet exactly who GASB is and how they got so powerful to tell us what we have to do in the state of Georgia and all the other states, but they certainly do. They tell us what we have to do. And also the Society of Actuaries has got new tables that they've got to use. So we're looking at, with the new Society of Actuarial tables, it's estimated that our accrued liability will increase by approximately 2.2% or $14.6 million in the next year. Required minimum contributions will increase by approximately 6.7% or another $1.2 million in the next year. So we think that all these things, or we know that all these things coming together, I can't afford to pay the officers their just retirement benefits as we go down this road without some additional revenue. We've done things to try to cut the cost into the fund. We're mean and lean as far as the administrative cost. We don't manage any money inside. We use external auditors and external managers. That's the cheapest way for us to go. And we've even taken on the administration of some other small retirement plans to generate money for us. And we've asked the officers themselves to give up more money as well. This thing started in the 50s with a $3 a month contributions. Then it went to $7, then it went to $10, and then a couple, 3 years ago, we increased it to $10 and $20, and now this bill will raise it to $30. But not only that, we changed the vesting schedule. When everybody else is reducing vesting, we went from a 10-year vesting to a 15-year vesting to make sure we're talking about providing benefits for career officers. So we think the opportunity is there to help law enforcement. The cities and the counties need it because they're having a recruiting issue in maintaining law enforcement officers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'd be glad to answer questions along. And I'd like to also introduce Chief Glass. He's the newest member of our board. Chief Glass is over in Monroe, Georgia.
All right. We do have some Representative Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Kitchen and Mr. Carter, and all of you for being here sharing this information this afternoon. I'm just curious to know, one question you pretty much answered already. I was just curious to know, why did you select insurance? So you've explained that to help fund this retirement. And just know I'm very, very supportive of law enforcement across this entire state. But I have to ask, what's being proposed to fund this retirement, how would this affect small business owners such as funeral home businesses
This
with a
restrict-
lot of
excuse me.
vehicles. A lot of vehicles
Yeah.
that the insurance has to be paid whether the hearse wheels roll or not.
Correct.
Thank you.
We're talking about liability and collision insurance on automobiles. 0.25% is the percentage that's proposed. If your insurance was $600 a year, 0.25% is going to raise your premium by $1.50 per year. But if you take all the policies throughout the state of Georgia, it means significant money. I checked with the insurance commissioner's office, and in 2013 was the latest numbers they had. Automobile insurance premiums amounted to $1,500,000,000 in the state of Georgia written by insurance companies. 0.25% of that money, if we could verify it, would mean $16 million on an annual basis to this retirement fund. If we could get that, we can support the law enforcement officers and feel comfortable that we'll be here many years down the road. One of my most interesting stories, and I hope everybody doesn't do this, but we had 2 years ago, had a city of Savannah peace officer die and was drawing benefits. His death age was 106. He drew retirement benefits longer than he worked. So if everybody lives to 106, we got a real problem in the fund. And that's the good and the bad side of a defined benefit plan. The good is you don't outlive your money. The bad is you might live too long for the retirement plan. But thank you. And something else I'd like to mention to you, I know you have a concern for small cities and small counties. This plan is more important to those people than it is to the state officers and to the Gwinnett County officers, because this will replace a larger percentage of their salary than it will for the wealthy officers in the wealthy counties. This is super important for the deep South Georgia rural counties and North Georgia rural counties. But thank you.
All right. We have any other questions of the committee? Of any of the three, the author? Okay, we do have one.
I was just curious, with the increase from $20 to $30, how much money will that yield for the fund?
It'll be about another $1.5 million.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Buckner.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Sir? That will be a decision that has to be made after the money becomes available. There's nothing in this bill that guarantees anybody any additional benefits. We got to see the money, and then the board does have the authority to give a cost of living increase to retirees, and that's what we would hope to do, because retirees have not had an increase since '08. But it's based on the actuarial study that says the money is available to do it. Yeah, 2000, what did I say? Okay, 2008 was the last COLA they had.
You have one more?
Next thing, I'm going to agree with you on the idea, the notion that most pension plans are in trouble. That 93% pension plan. I got people from the ERS and DRS in here. What is the percentage on the ERS? About 73. 73. What's the percentage on the TRS? About 81.5. So the next thing we're going to get is we've got to get them their $14 million to put in there. Why?
I understand.
Most pension plans in this United States, not just states of Georgia, not just cities of Atlanta, most pension plans are in a negative position. To have one in the 70s, that's a high percentage of funding you have. You'll be surprised how many of them end up less than 50. Our employees, and one of the reasons it's called defined contribution and defined benefit. We have, when I go home, I've got one particular friend that was, I think he retired under the old plan, and the new old plan. I don't percentage of the years you work as your highest salary from the state is for the state retirement. I'm gonna go back to the old plan. I don't know how many of my state employees, if you work 30 years, you got 60% of your highest 10 years. That's about what we expect. We're moving as probably 75% or better of corporations and states across the nation from that defined benefit. The benefit is 2% of the number of years you work. The defined contribution, we tried that on new employee, the ERS employees, and we moved it up to where the state wasn't putting in as much, but they would match up to a certain point. And that is the norm out here in society. What we found out is we weren't matching enough for the employees to participate in the plan, so we had to go back and change the plan. I think it's down to 1% now, and we match on it. But that does, the only way that creates more dollars for retirement purposes is if you as the individual are willing to put in. The state helps you if you're willing to put in more than the minimum.
But we're on a defined
It's
benefit.
gonna cause everybody a problem. But that seems to be the answer. We had to go back. It didn't work. So again, if you're not gonna work for me forever, don't take the pension from me. Because we weren't paying, and we weren't putting enough in. So we went back and changed that 2 years ago.
Started off at 5%, I believe, and it dropped down. They're starting to raise it to 5%.
I'll, Mr. Carter, you know, I'm a little bit leery. No, there ain't
I'm gonna tell
one
you.
thing that fixes FIS. I mean, it's fixing, there's not one thing that can fix our problem.
But this is not a defined benefit program.
I know, but it's part of the retirement plan that y'all provide in addition to what they make on whatever retirement plan they have to be on, the old one, the old line, whatever that would mean. I don't know what kind of plan that individuals that work for police departments,
Right.
not the state.
Right.
I don't, they're all on the board. So I'm not going there. I'm just trying to say what it's gonna cost the state.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the biggest difference in us and the other defined benefit plans you're talking about in the state of Georgia, we are not percentage of salary based. Our benefits are $24.41 per month times the number of years that you're in the plan up to the maximum of 30 and now a minimum of 15. So we don't have to worry about salary increases and those kind of things. Okay, sir. All right.
The only thing that fixes those that have a state insignia on it. And that, right now, that's the primary thing, the rest of these live. The only thing that fixes them is they need a raise. I don't mean 3%. I mean a raise. I've got 2 departments in the state that have been cut to death. This just happens to be one of them. And I don't know how long or when that takes place. The governor made some mention this morning that there's going to be, a little one. But I don't know how, and again, y'all are getting sick on $600, I understand it. It creates a boatload of money. We as the state, and those people out there in the insurance, and I'm sure you're going to hear it in a minute, I'm going to get mine said, and try to be quiet and stop at work and move forward. But when you're talking about something called domestic insurance companies, we're having trouble. I sell insurance that's called life and health, so I'm going out of business anyway. But people that are in the insurance business that sell home and auto for their main source of revenue, they're insurance business are having trouble keeping domicile companies in the state of Georgia. And when we do something that affects every one of these insurance companies, and I know $1.50 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it's 0.25% of every dollar that's out there, and that's not only are we getting money, that doesn't just happen in Georgia. That goes to every state that we do business with as an insurance company. They're gonna get the 0.25 on down the line, and it's gonna make it tougher and tougher for us to keep automobile, not the domestic automobile companies in this state. I'm looking for another avenue.
We'll take that.
You know, this will affect every person that drives a car. Supposedly, everybody's got insurance. Y'all know how that goes. Y'all know how that goes. Y'all stop them. I don't know. It costs you more if you don't have it. Every person in the state is supposed to have insurance, and it would cost every person. And again, whether it's $1.50, or if it's $1,050. Somebody's got 4 or 5 cars that are a little bit higher rated. But I'm looking for an avenue. I'm not sold on the fact that this is that. I don't mind saying, hey, it's okay for $30 and we can do this, or show me how much it's going to cost the state of Georgia. This is a no cost to the state of Georgia, the way I understand it.
That is correct.
Show me. I don't know how much this last one cost me. It didn't. Yes, sir. It didn't, because the money's already in there, and they ain't got the time. But I know for a fact that we do things that cost the state of Georgia money every time I've been in session. I'm looking for an avenue. I'm not sure 0.25 on the insurance premium for auto and liability is it.
Sure. Tell them we're open to any avenue.
We just want to keep the bill alive, keep it moving, and
How you do it?
good. We just want to keep the bill alive and keep it moving, and this is what we came up with, and we're certainly open to any suggestions. We just know that the bill long-term, or the fund long-term, is going to have some problems, and we've got to act now, not 5 years from now, and we're willing to negotiate to come up with some sort of solution. We just need to do something.
I don't disagree, but I'm not sure this is something.
Well,
And I'll say, like I said before, I wasn't involved in the onset of this, and Ms. Bagwell here yesterday gave me a pretty good tutorial on insurance that I was unaware of, and the domestic part of it, and how everything is headquartered in Nebraska now because of various financial reasons. I think our group is open to anything, any type of help in any fashion or any means to facilitate keeping this a viable retirement plan. And the insurance companies just came up because we all knew that the Fireman's Fund was funded by the insurance companies. And when I was working, I had several troopers that were volunteer firemen. And they came to me and they wanted to know if they could belong to both funds. And I certainly had no idea whether that was possible or not, so I went to the Attorney General, and he gave me an unofficial opinion that they couldn't. So they said, well, we're going to stick with the Fireman's Fund because it pays more and it's more stable. But I think that's how insurance came up.
Again, that, when that was put in 1,000 years ago, there wasn't so much looking at what automobile
Right.
rates and everything had gone to.
Right.
They hadn't gone down. And losing companies is the problem.
I can tell you exactly how much I pay for insurance every month because I pay to one company.
Did you get a decrease this year?
No, but I belong to one that gives a rebate every year. I got about $500 back, but
If you hurt yourself and wrecking your car, you ain't gonna get no rebate.
and I've never had a wreck, so.
That's not what state throws there.
Well, to be honest, I've had two over there. I've never had one in my personal vehicle, but But I was trying to save some school children in the road, and I drove.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to introduce Steve Wilson, President of the Sheriff's Association, and Terry Norris, their Executive Director. This is the one time that law enforcement has really been united in this state. We've got the FOP, the PBA, the Chiefs Association, the Sheriff's Association. Everybody in the state of Georgia in law enforcement really believes in this retirement fund, and we finally found a commonality that they can all support together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. One last question, Mr. Carter. You mentioned the number of members, and you know my background as a county commissioner. I'm just curious to know who would be considered a member. What position? Like your sheriffs, your chief deputy sheriffs, the jailers? Are the jailers considered a member? And
No,
who would be
it's not.
considered?
It has to be sworn law enforcement officers, meaning they have to have a PBLE certification with post. They must work for a city, a county, or the state of Georgia.
However, it is clearly one of the goals and objectives that we'd like to have at some point an actuarial study that would allow county jailers to be members of the fund. That is not something that a lot of the South Georgia sheriffs can afford to do now. I'm in Cherokee County. I can afford to send my jailers to go ahead and get them mandated, even though they just stay in the jail. But a South Georgia County sheriff cannot do that. He can't afford to let that deputy be gone that for 10 weeks. He just cannot afford that. So that is another objective long term, if we can get funding that would actually support allowing those jailers to actually become members of the fund. Right now, it simply just won't allow that. So that is something that is very, very important for a lot of those small counties who they can't even become members of the fund right now as it stands because the money just doesn't exist. And you can, I don't know what county you're in, but to speak to your sheriff about that, and he would love to have his jailers become members, but he can't right now because the fund will not support it.
Okay. Thank you.
And just let me say, the jailers are the lowest paid people in the criminal justice system. They probably have the worst job and the worst benefits, and they're the people that probably need this most, and they're deprived of it because of their status.
And Department of Corrections officers are members. They are, but county jailers are not.
Okay, let me go to Chairman Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make a statement first. I've been selling automobile insurance for over 30 years, and back before we did the geek system and all the other things, from January to April, before we changed getting your license on your birthday, I'd have 10 people walk in the office a month wanting to buy tag insurance. I said, what's tag insurance? I said, what do you want? I got to go get a tag, man. I got to get me some insurance to get a tag. I said, what are you going to do? Well, you going to pay for a year? What you going to? No, I just will pay for a month and go get a tag. And that's exactly what they'd do. They'd pay for a month, go get a tag, and then policy, you'd never see them again until next year. I am so thankful that, and I finally kept telling them, you can't do that. But I am so glad that we got the system changed so that you said it costs them more now. When they cancel insurance, it's $85 for the lapse of coverage, and then if they keep going on, get their license suspended, they have to pay for it. And thank God we've got a lot less people driving the roads now with no insurance than we used to have. A couple of questions, I think. Do we have anybody from the insurance company that's going to speak on this, Mr. Chairman?
We do.
Okay. I won't go into that then. One question, Mr. Carter, and I know you and I have worked down through the years on a lot of stuff, and I'm trying to remember if we changed this or if it's still available, because at one time, you guys could start drawing after 10 years.
Yeah, it used to be 10 years.
They could start drawing after 10 years. We changed it to 15, but they
15.
could start drawing and still work. Is that correct? Or
That
did
we
ever
eliminated that as well. That was called the 30-55 bill. If they
Yeah.
had 30 years and was age 55, they could start drawing benefits, but that's been eliminated
Okay,
also.
I was thinking we had
Yeah.
done that, but I knew that was a pretty
Yeah.
bad situation, but I thought we had dealt with that at some point in time.
We did.
I appreciate you guys. I appreciate what you're doing. I have to agree with Chairman Meadows. I'd like to just try to figure out a different way to fund your fund other than, laying it on the backs of the automobile insurance companies, because I know my company's gone up. We've had 3 rate increases in the last year and a half, about 35%. I know I've got lists of other companies that have gone up 40%, 45%. Believe it or not, I'm just going to give you all a little insurance lesson here. The technology in cars now is killing us. The windshields, these new windshields, it's got all the sensors in there. You used to be able to put a windshield in for $300 to $500. Now it's $2,500 for some of these things. Headlights in these cars that do all this fancy stuff used to be $300 or $400 a headlight, $2,500 per fender now. All the sensors in the back, all the backup cameras, all the things you got there. Used to be you'd put a bumper and a trunk lid on, thousands of dollars for stuff. Airbags, $2,000 or $3,000 every time an airbag goes off. Technology that's protected us is also killing us in the insurance company with claims. So anyway, rates are going up. It is not getting any cheaper out here for the consumers, and it's sort of bothersome to me to see even a small percentage go out there. But I appreciate you guys. Thank y'all for what you do, and maybe we can work up something. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we are drawing close to our time when we have to vacate this room, and I think there's a committee supposed to be following us, but I am going to recognize my seat partner behind me. James?
Just a point of clarification. This is the first time that the sources of funding would come from the insurance company, or was it already a part of your capital stack? This would be the first time that this would be a part of it, correct?
Yes, this would be the first time. This would be the first time there's a change in the revenue stream since the fund was created in 1950. The formula we used, or y'all created, your predecessors in 1950 is still there.
So it's just fines, fees, and bond forfeitures right now,
that's
part of
exactly
that
right.
source.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as you know, with criminal justice reform has been great,
Yeah.
but our revenue has gone down because of that. Community service time does not fund retirement. Thank you, sir.
I'm just going to speak here about, time element, but there's been a number of issues that have come up, and I know that retirement is important to all of us. All of us, when I say there's not one in this room that is not looking forward to a time when we can retire and enjoy the benefits of what we've paid into. I think there's some, because of some of the questions and concerns, there is definitely an issue that has not been resolved. The issue seems the ask now is to increase the insurance premium to take care of the cost. I would not want to see this killed over only having one option or the possibility of one option. I would think that we need more discussion on this, that we do not completely deal with this today. Matter of fact, that was in my plans, and in discussing this with a number of you, I felt like that this is a bigger issue than we have information to solve it. And so if the committee is agreeable, and if there is a motion to table this until we can get some, and we'd ask you that you look at some other options that might help us, then we will certainly look at this again. And when I say again, I'm talking about this year. But I think that if we were to put this out right now, it might not be a favorable vote. All right, we have a motion to table. Do we have a second? We have a motion and second. Any comments? All right, all in favor of tabling this, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposition? Same sign, and we table this until we get some more information that helps us to make our decision.
Mr. Chairman, we're very pleased with that. We'd be glad to get out and look at some other options and ideas, something we can all get united on, and something that we can all get behind and get past across the street.
That's great.
Thank
That's
you.
what we're looking for.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here today. And we will not have a meeting next week because that's appropriation week, but we will the following week. We've got a lot of bills that had actuarial studies, and we've got to get those out because there's dropping retirement bills almost daily. So thank you.